What's up, guys? And today I'm coming at you with a deck profile on one of the decks I was actually waiting to profile and do a video on. But with the release of the recent March 31st ban list, both this and the other deck had to be put on hold. For the time being, the other one being the Kaiju Super Heavy Samurai deck. For those of you that were looking forward to it, I will do that later. I just need to try out some new card choices because having to find something else to compensate or replace the Max C or the third Kaiju Slumber, but I'll probably figure something out. But for now, this is just kind of the deck I've been playing with at locals recently, and as you can probably tell, it's Fluffals. This deck is extremely fun to play, extremely competitive, and can do pretty good at locals and somewhat decent at regionals. Like I know recently, Sam Cox from Team Bropire, he got top 16 at regional with Fluffals, because like that dude's Fluffal Jesus basically. But yeah, with the recent support and Fusion Forces, the deck got way better. Also, the rarity bumps were really nice, and really the only thing the deck's missing now is Fright for Patchwork, which was supposed to originally be released in Duelist Saga, but for some reason or another, Konami decided to change that. So hopefully soon we get it in the next Duelist pack, because the advertisement on Konami's website says it's supposed to come with Fright for cards. So hopefully that does include Patchwork, because that card is like literally the last thing this deck needs to be like at full power. But for now, this is kind of the build I've been going with post-ban list. So starting off with the monsters, of course we are running the standard 3 Fluffal Dog. It searches any of your Fluffals whenever it's normal, special summon, or Edgem Sabers. Just because Edgem Sabers, a couple of your fusion materials actually do specifically require him, which really sucks. But you still need him to make certain fusion materials, and plus this guy's level 4 fairy, and you'll see where that comes into play in a little bit. And then 3 copies of Fluffal Penguin. This card is like the literal nuts when you fuse it with Edgem Chain. If anybody doesn't know what Penguin does, during your main phase you can special summon a Fluffal from your hand except himself. And then if he's sent to grave as a fusion material, you get to draw 2 and discard 1. So obviously you're going to use Penguin and Chain to make Kraken. And then you get to draw 2, discard 1, and then search a Fright for card, which is really, really cool. A lot of people will go towards the Toad variant because, hey, it's level 4 water, let's make Toad instead of other things. But personally, I don't like the Toad build because you kind of have to more or less devote more of your deck towards summoning Bahamut Shark. And that's really about it. And then if they get rid of your Toad and your Bahamut Shark, you just have like 1 negate on board, essentially. And then if they break through that board, then you're kind of screwed at that point. So that's kind of where I went with more the pure / Brilliant Fusion build, just because it's a lot more consistent. There's a lot of draw power in the deck. Really handles the grind game really well, and still has the OTK potential that Fluffals are known for. And next, 3 copies of Fluffal Bear. This searches Toy Vendor, that's really about it. So, like, a really good opening hand is just this and Brilliant Fusion. So if you like open with those 2, then that's like where the deck really shines. And then 2 copies of Fluff Wings, because this is your Brilliant Fusion targets your light monster. And plus the draw 2 combo with Toy Vendor is really, really great, and plus the Toy Vendor search is really, really awesome. So obviously you have Bear to dump or set or search Toy Vendor, and then you set it, and then you activate Brilliant Fusion to dump this, and then you have your 2 Fluffals in grave automatically for your Toy Vendor combo. So that's how that comes into play. 1 Fluffal Owl, just because it's a pseudo poly and it searches fusion substitutes, so that's really, really nice. And then, of course, the 3 copies of Edgem Chain. He's like the better Edgem card. More often than not, you're either going to be using this to fuse into Kraken, or Sheep, because Sheep is the only fusion that specifically lists Edgem Chain, which is kind of nice. But you're also going to be sending it for Toy Vendor, because it lets you search a Fright for card. So you're either searching Fright for Fusion, Fright for Factory, and as you can probably guess, Fright for Patchwork, which in turn searches a Fluffal and Polymerization. So that's kind of why we need that card as soon as possible, because you can search the card that searches like your main cards of the deck, which is really, really insane. So for now we're playing 3 copies of this just because you want to get to Fright for Fusion and Fright for Factory as quickly as possible. 1 Edgem Sabers, mainly just because it's a name, but also unlike most Brilliant Fusion variants, you actually can unbreak your hand with drawing 1 Garnet. You can run Foolish Burial, because you can dump this guy to grave, and then put your Garnet back on top of your deck to special summon him, and then you can activate your Brilliant Fusion, because your Garnet's technically back in deck, so it's really, really nice. So, like, if your Garnet's in hand, you can just top deck it back with Edgem Sabers, which is really, really nice, so it kind of makes your Brilliant Fusion live again. And the next, the 2 copies of King of the Swamp. Considering bumping this to 3, It's just the main deck space is really, really tight. There's a couple cards I have considered taking out, but for now, just 2 kind of works. Just as like a pseudo fusion material, basically your pseudo Edge of Sabers, and it searches polymerization, which is really cool. And then sadly now the 1 Max C, but if you do draw the 1 of going second, then it's still really good. And then the 1 Garnet, because we don't want to draw into it, but yet we draw it more than our other cards. So that is it for the monsters. Moving on to the spells, we have, of course, the 3 copies of like one of the best cards of the deck, Toy Vendor. For those of you who don't know what Toy Vendor does, you are going to learn how amazing this card is. Its effect is a soft once per turn. Say if you have if you have multiple copies of this on the field, then you can do its first effect multiple times. Where you can discard a card, draw 1, and reveal it, and if it's a Fluffal, you get to special summon, otherwise sent to the graveyard. So like, either you discard Edge of Chain off of this, or you just luckily draw a chain, and you can just mill it and be like, oh, I'll still get the chain effect. And then whenever it's sent to the graveyard, not from the field, just anytime sent to the graveyard, you can add an Edge of Sabers or Fluffal monster from your deck to your hand. So like, even if this dies, it rotas. So obviously, like the main combos, like you have, like I mentioned earlier, you have Wings and Bear Engrave. You only activate Wings of Graveyard effect way control Toy Vendor. You banish it and another Fluffal to draw 1. Then you destroy Toy Vendor to draw 1, and then Toy Vendor's effect triggers to let you search a Fluffal or Edge of Sabers. So pretty crazy draw power there. And then the 3 copies of Brilliant Fusion, shouldn't really have to explain this. 2 Frightful Fusion, your kind of Miracle Fusion in the deck, you banish materials from grave. Really, you don't want to go for this as quickly as possible. But more or less, you're only really going to play Frightful Fusion whenever you know for sure you're going to win the game. Or like if you just need to clear their field and you want to make a Tiger and pop a bunch of cards. But more often than not, I'm just using Frightful Fusion to basically make Wolf and swing for game, and that's really about it. 1 copy of Frightful Factory, just because this card kind of sucks to draw. You mainly want to search this off of Edge of Chain, but you banish Polymerization, and it lets you fuse basically from field or hand. So this is just kind of like your extender. So like mainly you fuse with Kraken, and you fuse with you make Kraken with Penguin and Chain. Chain lets you search Frightful Factory, and then Penguin lets you draw 2 and discard 1. And then you activate Frightful Factory to banish your Polymerization, fuse with Kraken, and like maybe 2 other monsters in the field to summon Sabretooth, and Sabretooth will bring Kraken back, and you can see where that goes from there. The second effect is pretty irrelevant. Whenever it's sent to graveyard, it lets you add back a banished Frightful Fusion, but you're never banishing this, like, ever, unless you go up against, like, Ritual Beasts, and they flip macro on you or something, and you get to add this back, I guess. I don't know, like, that effect never really happens ever, but more often than not, you're just using this to kind of extend your plays and further make insane boards. Of course, the 2 copies of Polymerization and 1 Fusion Substitute. The Fusion Substitute combo in this deck is, like, insane, because you can search this off of King of the Swamp and Fluffal Owl, because this name is always treated as Polymerization. The only downside is that it only lets you fuse with cards from the field, but if this would let you fuse from the field and or the hand, then this card would be like broken and like instantly replace Polymerization. But if you don't know the combo, since Norton's at 1, you have Fusion Substitute and Grave, you instant fuse in at Norton, and then you make like your rank 4 play, detach Norton, then you can banish this and add Norton back and draw a card, so this card's really, really good. And then next, the 3 copies of Instant Fusion, because Norton plays. Also, you can instant fuse into Fright for Sheep if you need extra fusion material. The only downside to Sheep is that Sheep only gets its revival effect when it's destroyed by battle or an opponent's card effect, so if it gets destroyed by your own instant fusion, then you can't really do much there, you just kind of wasted Sheep. And then next, the 2 copies of Foolish Burial Goods, because you can also get Toy Vendor to grave really quickly and essentially makes this into Rota for Fluffals. 1 Upstart, because give your opponent an extra 1,000 life points, and this kind of deck is not really that much of an issue. 1 Raigeki, basically for going second. If you draw this, you sack your opponent and make your plays. And then lastly, the 1 Solemn Warning, because we can't play Vanities and Tennis anymore, but you can still make some pretty crazy boards if you have this and just set it and stop their 1 summon. And that is it for the main deck. Going on to the extra. The 2 copies of Kraken, this card is really, really good. For those of you who don't know what Kraken does, he takes an Edge-Up monster and a Fluffal monster, so he's like your generic fusion. So he's probably the easiest to make in the deck. His effect is once per turn, you can target a monster your opponent controls and send it to the graveyard. He can't attack directly the turn you activate that effect, but he can attack twice, and at the end of the battle phase, if he battled, he can change the defense. So his effect sends, it doesn't destroy, so if a card says, oh, it can't be destroyed by your opponent's card effects, then you can just summon Kraken and send it to grave. And its effect isn't a hard once per turn, so obviously main combo if you're trying to deal with their board is you summon Kraken, send a monster to grave, and then you fuse this into Sabretooth, and Sabretooth can bring this back and you can use its effect again. And if they still have a monster, they can just attack over stuff, because it's going to get the boost from Sabretooth either way. And speaking of which, 2 copies of Sabretooth, really easy to make him with 3 materials to be immune to destruction by battle card effects. The 400 boost is really nice, and if you make him in Tiger, then all your Fluffals are at pretty high numbers. Plus, they're level 8, so you can play Harbinger Dragon to make it to where if you don't OTK, then you just summon Harbinger Dragon, and it's really hard for them to play around that in most cases. 2 copies of Tiger, this is still kind of, I guess, debatable in the deck. Because I don't really see myself making more than 1 Tiger per game. But it's just there in case you need it, I guess. If you don't want to play 2 copies of Tiger, you can place it with another rank for, like, I guess Abyss Dweller, because you can use Abyss Dweller's, like, attack gaining effect if you make it with Norden and Penguin, which is kind of nice. You can also play Castell if need be. It's just kind of personal preference, really, just because you can't make it sometimes. It's just there as an option, I guess. Because you're going to be making your fusions more than your rank 4s, honestly. Fright for Wolf, because sometimes you can still make the OTK and make him with like 3 or 4 materials and just go boop 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 and attack for game. 1 Sheep, because like I mentioned earlier, he's the only fusion that specifically has Edge Imp Chain. And Armades, whenever he battles, and once per turn, if he dies by battle or an opponent's card effect, you bring it back and he gains 800 attack. So if they get rid of it again, it just comes out with even higher attack, and it's just really annoying card to deal with. And then these next 2 should be pretty standard. Seraph Knight, because Brilliant Fusion Engine. Norden, because instant fusion. And that is it for the fusions. And then for the Xyz, Fairy Cheer Girl, because all of your Fluffals, for the most part, except for like Bear, Owl, and Wings, are level 4 fairies. And also Norden is a level 4 fairy. So you can make Fairy Cheer Girl and just draw more cards, which is a really great thing with Fluffals. This is kind of like just a standard in Fluffals now. 1 Daigusto Emerald. This is like kind of, I guess, your slower way of unbricking your hand with Garnet. Like, I guess you could, if you have Brilliant Fusion in hand, then you could theoretically summon Garnet, instant fuse into Norden, and then just overlay for Emerald with like 2 monsters in grave. You detach the Garnet and then shuffle all 3 back and draw a card if you have Brilliant Fusion. But more often than that, this is just for recycling materials. And then our Utopia package to deal with big monsters that you really don't want to, that you normally can't deal with. Then lastly, the aforementioned Harbinger Dragon to basically finish the game in most cases. But yeah, that is basically it for the deck right now. As I mentioned earlier, the deck is extremely fun on a local level. You could take this to a regionals and probably do decent. Don't really have a side deck for this deck right now just because it's only for locals. And our locals, we really just don't side too often unless it's like a really big event. But for now, this deck's extremely fun to play, and as I mentioned earlier, hopefully we do get Fright for Patchwork soon, because that's like the last card this deck needs to obviously be a full power, as I mentioned earlier. But for now, it's pretty cool for what it is. Makes some pretty fun plays, some really interesting boards, and makes some pretty cool setups. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and as always, I will catch you guys later.